company registration documents, tax clearance letter, BE certification. And I just want to emphasize on this. Please, when you apply, make sure that you meet the compliance. The reason I'm saying that is that once you have not met the compliance, your project will not move. You wouldn't even know what were the weaknesses in your submissions. What do you need to do to improve your submission? But once you've done that, then your project goes to the evaluation panel. They will be able to, even if we reject you as the NFVF, but you will have notes that says, this is where you got it wrong. This is what you need to in order to improve. So please make sure that when you apply, this part of mandatory documents, you just ace it. Because you don't need rocket science to do that. You just make sure that your ID is certified within the 3 to 6 months period. You just make sure that your tax clearance is valid. I mean, everything is there. Just make sure. Now, for development, what we'll need for development is a brief synopsis that does not exceed 1 page, a 2-letter motivation, detailed development schedule, detailed development budget, and we've got these templates. If you want to apply, and actually they are there on the system in terms of how to budget. Then we also need to see your target audience. The story that you want to tell, who do you want to tell it to? And then your updated CV, certified copies of documents, your mandatory documents, tax clearance, and everything. Now we've got what we call funding caps. We have created funding caps so that you'd know what to apply for and how much we are offering on that. Unfortunately, that part, we've just updated our policy. We've got new funding caps, but I'll read them from my notes. They are not on the slides. For development, feature film, we can fund you up to 230,000, but this is only meant for the tier 1 and the tier 2s. Then for a documentary, it's 180K for both tier 1 and tier 2. Then for a short film, we're putting aside 100,000 K, which is for tier 1, 2, and 3. And then we've got TV formats that are kept at 250K, which is for tier 1 and 2. Then we've got animation. A short for tier 1, 2, and 3 is at 250K. For a feature, we offer you 400K. And then for a series, we also offer you 400K. And remember, these feature and series are only meant for the tier 1s and the tier 2s. Then for production, for a feature, we can fund you up to 1.8 million. This is only for the tier 1 and 2. Then for a TV and film project, we'll give you up to 300K, which is for tier 1, 2, and 3. For a short film, it's 250K for tier 1 and 2. And then for tier 3, it's 200K. Then for a feature on animation, it's 1.8 million. This is also for tier 1 and 2. For a short, it's 550K for tier 1 and 2. And then for tier 3, it's 350K. Then for web series, it's 200K for tier 1, 2s, and 3s. Then, in terms of training, we are paying 100% for a national bursary. We are paying 250,000 for an international bursary, and for training grant, we are offering up to 350. Now, our funding cycles, usually we'd open the first cycle in May, and then the second cycle would be in around December. We no longer have 3 cycles as we normally do, because usually our budget gets exhausted earlier, so we do not have the luxury of doing the third cycle. So I'd encourage you that if you apply, please go for the first cycle. Because when we sit and decide how we fund, we look at the project that they've got merit. Even if it means we'll exhaust the funds for cycle 1, we'll do that, because we cannot turn away good projects hoping that they'll come back again. Now, this is how you apply. And I think this slide is important for you guys. And it's not on the screen. Can I for a moment have that? Right. When you apply, once we have a call, that green button, that's the one that you use to apply. Once we've made a call and you want to apply, you go on that green button and then you click apply online, and this is what you'll see. That's where you need to create a username and a password. Then after you've done that, you'll fill in your details there. Then this is the course that we'll be having at that time. Then you'll choose the right call, and then it will take you to a window where you start submitting your documents and everything. Then you also need to agree to a disclaimer. Remember that now we've got the POPI Act. There's a disclaimer that will come on your screen. Without accepting that, you'll never be able to go into the system. I think I've touched on this. Now, this is what we normally look when we evaluate your project. One, we need to see the concept. The applicants are evaluated on the strength of their concept, the originality of the concept, and the uniqueness of the story idea. Then we look at the premise. We need to ensure that that story has a compelling and controlling idea and a human value in it that is successfully explores and finally accesses the theme, a theme that is carried throughout the story right up to its climax. Because sometimes what people will do, you'd be telling 3 stories in one story. So now we'd look at that is this story that you sold us, is it being carried throughout the entire story right up to the end? We also look at things such as the genre. Is it a drama? And it must have the characteristics of a drama. If it's sci-fi, it must have those characteristics of a sci-fi. Then we looked at the structure, whether the way you wrote your story, the way you're telling us the story, do you really understand the basics of filmmaking? Then we also look at things such as characterization. Are your characters well developed? So those are the things that we look when we evaluate your project. Then once you have been successful, we will put approvals on our website. Then we'll send you the letter of congratulations. Then that's when we'll start contracting you, letting you sign the contract. I'm not going to touch on the careers in the film industry. I think that's meant for kids who are still at school. But I know you are sitting here. I hear some of you are actors, some of you are your producer and everything. So this is not meant for you. Tandega, I think because of time, I would end it there, although there's still more that we can talk about. But looking at the audience and the province itself, I think this is more than enough for you. And if you still have other questions, I will still answer. I'll still be, after this, I'll be available for about 30 minutes. We can do that one-on-one. And
before you run away, Tesi,
okay.
I actually want to ask you one question. Right at the beginning, when you were talking about funding and the tiers, you said that you want to match apples with apples and oranges with oranges. But I see that in your funding breakdown, you have some funding that's reserved for tier 1 and tier 2. But when it comes to tier 3, they're still competing with tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. They're all looking for the same funding. Is there a plan to have specific tier 3 funding that tier 1 and tier 2 do not have access to?
No, these are actually funding caps. Whatever I was mentioning were funding caps. Now, what we will do, even if some of the funding caps are equal, what we'll do is that per every cycle, we will be saying we've got 2 million for development for tier 1s. We've got 1 million for tier 2s, and we've got maybe another million for tier 3. So usually we'll split our budget according to the tiers. Even if we like we're saying for shorts, we've got 250K across. But what will happen is that we will be having different budgets according to those tiers.
All right. Okay, thank you. That explains. And there is one question that came online. It kind of touches on to the previous conversation that was had about famous faces being given preference, and in this regard, it's famous provinces being given preference. So there's a question here from Mpumalanga asking why applications from Mpumalanga are not funded. What are you doing to target what are now marginalized provinces?
I will respond by saying that if you are from one of these marginalized provinces, once you submit your application, already you've got 2 points just by coming from a marginalized province. And even in our sitting, when we evaluating projects, we will be saying, oh, this is from Mpumalanga, and then this is a 2 out of a 3. That will give it another preference. Okay, but what are the weaknesses on this? How do we help this person who's coming from another province? Then we will discuss it and also give them that advantage. But now, the other thing that you're asking is that what are we doing? I think we're using platforms such as this one to garner more applications. What happens is that normally when we open a call, we would have more than 300 applications. Out of the 300 applications, you'd have 5 from Mpumalanga. You'd have 2 from Northwest. Then we know that Gauteng will give you 150, Western Cape will give you 70, KZN will give you 80. So that's how imbalanced we are in terms of applications. But we are using platforms such as this one so that we can come and explain to you what needs to be done in order to access our funding. We will do sometimes we go on road shows to speak to filmmakers, to speak to artists and say, this is what we can offer you, this is how we can help you. And even provinces themselves, they can, when they have activities, they can also invite us. We will come, like as it's happening right here, right now. We were invited, the organizer said, can you come and tell us what you have for us? And that's why we are here.
Thanks for that, Tesi. Do we have Mr. Ali online?
Other questions in the meeting?
Let me just check quickly. Is he online, or can we go ahead with questions? He's online.
I'm here. I can hear you, Tande.
Oh, hi. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you. I'm seeing myself in double vision here. It's a bit scary.
Yeah, well, we can't see you, so you're just a shadow in the background, and we're very
Okay,
suspicious.
so that's fine.
We're suspicious of people who don't show their faces. But so, Paul, can you just quickly introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, bearing in mind that this is a platform for mostly made for television content, short film, and emerging feature filmmakers. Thanks.
Okay, my name is Paul Raleigh. I attended the first film school at the Pretoria Technikon in 1971. I produced in the industry for some 30 odd years, and then for the last 16 years or so, I have been doing something called completion guarantee, which is very much similar to a producer's job. We just have to make sure that the films are completed on time and for the budget, because incomplete film has no value. So I have been in the industry. I'm quite well versed with the processes. I'm a past council member of the NFEF and the KZN Film Commission. So I'm happy here to stand, and I believe I'm standing in for the DTI who didn't arrive. So I'm not the DTI, but Sandeka will ask me questions about the rebates, and I will do my best to answer them. But please understand, I'm not an official of that department. So I will be very careful what I say, just to be sure that I give you the right information.
Okay, so basically that's him just putting in a disclaimer that he doesn't work for the DTI. But in Tsiatsi's this presentation, he spoke about the need for a finance plan. And in many cases, you might need more than what the NFVF offers in funding. And oftentimes, that extra funding is found from the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. So, Paul, can you just let us know what funding is actually available from the DTIC?
Okay, so there are about 100 incentives around the world which we call grant funding. In other words, that's money that does not have to be paid back. And that's why it's so important for producers, because it's not always possible for a film to recoup its budget. And if you are able to access some soft money or grant money, then that's funding that doesn't have to be recouped. So all these incentives, including the DTI, are based on spend. What you spend on South African companies or South African citizens is rebatable. You get the cash back either at the end or during the process of making the film. There are 4 rebates which the DTI offers. One is the emerging rebate for emerging producers. Now, I believe you're emerging until you've made 5 feature films or 5 projects. There, the rebate is up to 50% of the qualifying spend. You then go to local and co-production films where the baseline is 35% of the qualifying spend, but you can go up to 40% by hitting other targets. We then have a foreign rebate. These are largely for a lot of the films that we all read about that come and make their movies in Cape Town. That is around about the 25% mark. And then we also have a post-production rebate where if films are shot elsewhere, they can be post-produced here in South Africa, and there could be an incentive for the producers to come and do that, because generally films are not necessarily post-produced where they are shot. So people might go, for example, and shoot somewhere in Eastern Europe, but they'll go and do their post-production in the UK or Canada or the USA. So those are the 4 incentives. Just because I know everybody's probably doing sums in their head, all the rebates are capped at 50 million. So that's the maximum you can apply for. I know that in certain foreign films, they may give you more if you're going to spend an obscene amount of money. If you're going to spend $100,000, for example, in South Africa, you might be able to push that up to 100 million. But that's something between the producer and the DTIC. One of the challenges is that we've always had in the industry is somehow turning that piece of paper. I don't want to talk too much about the approval process, but certainly it's similar to what the NFVF spoke about. But remember that the DTIC is concerned with what you spend. They're not concerned with the script or the content as long as it doesn't break certain basic protocols. It's not their role to read your script and determine whether they like it or not. It's simply to look at the spend and who you're spending the money on. There isn't a requirement now where at least 20% of your spend must be spent on black suppliers who have been in business for at least 1 year. So by doing that, they're hoping, and this excludes the cost, by the way, of crew and cost. So 20% of your procurement must come from black-owned, 51% black-owned companies. The other thing about accessing the rebate is that if you want it paid in milestones, and the DTI will do that, they will pay it in 4 milestones. The 4th milestone will come once the film is delivered, but the 3 milestones that come during the course of making the film requires a completion guarantee, because it is public funds that they're dealing with, and they need to understand, and producers need to understand, that the film has to be completed and delivered. Even if the money is spent, I think we all agree that we want to see a completed product at the end. So it's a very attractive incentive, certainly for the emerging producers, to know that you have 50% of your budget available. Then the NFVF can top that up, and then there are other funders like IDC and KZN Film Commission, Joburg Film Commission, and the National Empowerment Fund, for example, apart from maybe a rich uncle. So it goes a long way to helping you find the money for your production. You usually have to start filming within a limited period of time. Once you get your approval and you set your shoot date, you have to start shooting within 3 months of that date. This allows the DTIC to budget for that money, set it aside, and actually know that the funds that they have set aside will be utilized. I'm sure there's going to be other questions that Thandeka might ask me, but in general terms, as I said, the criteria is about spend. So when you do your budget, you need to indicate what's being spent in South Africa. So we have what we call good spend and bad spend. So anything you spend outside of South Africa doesn't qualify. Everything that's spent in South Africa generally qualifies. And there are caps on producer, director, and writer fees. And there's also caps on connected party fees. So if you are involved in 1 or 2 companies that are providing goods and services, that amount is capped. You also are required to start an SPVC, which is a special vehicle company. It's a ring-fenced company that is set up specifically to do that project, where all the costs go through that. It's easy to audit, and there's no commingling of funds. So you can't have 2 productions going through the same bank account. And the DTI will pay out 60% during the course of the production, and the last 40% in the case of local films, where you have a completion guarantee, will be paid out after the film is completed, delivered, and audited. On international films and co-productions, it's all paid at the end. So that could be 3 or 4 months after you've completed the film.
Okay.
So that's a brief overview.
I have just one quick question. I know you don't work for the DTI, but maybe you could give us a quick point of view. We know that the mandate of the DTIC is job creation, right? And that's what they primarily base their rebate on. Is there a particular reason why they do not give a rebate on short films? Most of the people sitting here are making short films and are only reliant, for example, on the NFVF funding, and cannot boost that funding with any DTI rebates to improve the quality and give them more money to play around with. What are your thoughts around the decision not to rebate short films?
I saw a little while ago that the DTI put out a call for lower budget films, up to a max of somewhere between 250 and 500,000 maximum. So it may well be possible to qualify there. There's another thought here that perhaps you could do a collection of short films. For example, they do television series of half-hour length. So, you know, I'm just thinking if I was a producer out there and I had to put together, say, 4 12-minute short films, that would give me an hour of television. So there may be ways of approaching that challenge, because short films are very important. I mean, you know, I just want to give you an example of someone who is very successful in Hollywood now, and he's you know, I would say he's on the A-list. And it all started because he did a short film. He did a film called The Storekeeper. And so it is a way of honing your craft, and it's a good start, because it's very difficult to go and fund somebody with 3 or 5 or 8 or 10 million on their first project, whereas, you know, $1 million or 2 million on a short film is a risk that one can take if we think collectively that we are finding talent, because that's what it's all about, is to find talent and then to back that talent. So possibly there's a route there to doing an anthology of short films where maybe you try and come up with a theme and then you collectively put these short films together to make up an hour of television. Just a thought. Or a 60-minute film. I think the minimum is about 60 minutes that you could qualify.
Okay, thanks. So just for people in the room, I think that speaks to the values of this festival, which include connecting and promoting. So if 3 or 4 of you have short films and you need to get that extra funding, you collaborate together and you put your 4 short films together to make one 1-hour film, and perhaps you can access DTI funding and get additional funding for your film. So it's things to think about. Filmmaking has to be a collaborative process. So now we're just gonna go to questions from the floor, because we've run out of time. And I know there's a certain young man here with burning questions. Don't look away. So if we can take questions from the floor, please.
Any question?
Sure, Kalebo. Okay. And ke botsa mang kana le bitso la go praya ka le Tshabile. Oh, Matsietsi. Okay, cool. Sure, Prayak. You mentioned something about the bursary. So I have like 5 questions. So ne batla re ka tsone sone. Askis, because what we do with a coffee. Okay, so you said something about the bursary for deserving individuals. So I want to know how do you know the deserving individuals? As you look in this room right now, mostly are the filmmakers more really self-taught, and Harena Akishoke, but then I speak for myself. I get the film today, but then I get the qualification and I'm still doing this. So preferably those bursaries to study whatever.
Do you want me to answer you now?
Okay, like you gave me 2. You said something about Thai 3, Thai L.
Yeah.
Sure. So belong to Thai 2 or a Taiwan or whatever that is. How do I know that? Who says that so that I would know belong to something like that?
Okay, let me answer these 2 questions. Haribuwaga a deserving student for a bursary. If you get admitted into a tertiary institution, then you'd give us a motivation letter. Why do you want to study? Which area of film do you want to study? Then also we'd want, the same way as NSFAS is working, we would want to know that you are unable to afford tertiary education. Now in your application, you also have to submit either a salary advice from your mother, your father. If you don't have, then you just need to do that affidavit. Then if your parents are getting a grant from the social development, you take that slip and submit it. That's all that we need. Okay. Your motivation for studying film, and if you prove to us that you are needy, you cannot afford, that's what we need. That's all we need.
Okay.
But remember, you must have been accepted or provisionally accepted in a tertiary institution.
Oh, okay.
And then the second one, when I said tiers, I said tier 3, it's new entrance. If you haven't made 3 films, then you fall within a tier 3.
Okay. So I can say more than that?
Then you'd go to tier 2. If you have something that you have done that you can show to us, I've done 2 films, I've done 3 films, then it means you are a tier 3. We cannot decide that you are a tier 1 or 2, but your CV will tell us, your profile will tell us that you are a tier 1 or a tier 2.
Oh, okay.
But you just have to make sure you know better than us. So you just make sure that you tier yourself correctly. Because you might say, I'm trying to navigate the system and say I'm a tier 2. Then when we look at your biography, and you also need to list them, there's a window that allows you to list the films that you worked on. Now, when your projects get to the evaluators and they see that, okay, this one cheated on the system, then that's where you lose it.
Oh, okay. I gave a little. So you mentioned something about the funding and detailed proposals and stuff. On that point, I want to know, if now I have got some funding, is it the money that will help me to pay my artist, pay anything that I have to, or maybe rent the equipment, like that money, or save maybe for other projects? I'm just checking out.
No, you don't save it for other projects. Okay. You use it. Actually, what we want from you, so now, from your budget, hard contract, host applier, you do your budget, but hard sign a contract, you'd give us another budget. And when you submit, I can report the tranches. First one will be contract signing. Then let's assume key development. Then when you submit your MTP, then you also, how invoice for your MTP or invoice your cost report to say, with the 20,000 that you've given me, I have paid the researcher 5,000, I have paid the writer 5,000, I have done this and that. And once we are satisfied, we give you the next tranche. That's how we are going to operate until your funding is exhausted.
Okay.
So you don't have to save it for any other thing. You use it.
Sorry, before you ask your next question,
last one.
Can I just release Mr. Raleigh? Paul, thank you very much for sitting in and giving us some insight about the DTI. And if there are any further questions that come from the online channels, we will let you know and we will try and answer those online. But thank you so much for joining us and enjoy your lunch. Cool, so you can ask your...
Okay. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Sure, Brek. Ya bofelo ke ke apply le go de bentse re bontsha ka tena gore go apply wa ya ne then ke apply le ne ke apply tse for gona le relief fund and gona le di projects tse ding tsa let me see DE development production, and there was another development production, but then the dates are this one. There's one year 2020, there's one year 2019. So almost the se applied more. I actually any respond. Maybe can I get any mistake or maybe I can understand the more. So I wanna find out how do I make them right more? Because of since I apply until now, until when I would like to feel like relief for now go over the ports.
What sometimes happens is an incomplete application. If our complete application now, then you'd never get feedback from us because it doesn't go into an evaluation. But we give feedback to projects that goes into evaluation. How can share our website, our application portal in all these stages? So sometimes you need to look at the stage, say your application how it moves on. But once or how check a status ebe offer 21, it on cancel meeting, then be sure you'll get a letter of rejection or a letter of approval. You'll also get the notes. But if you haven't gone through to that council meeting, it means how meter compliance. It means you failed at a compliance level. Sometimes you'd be lucky that in the process, bakona check about tax clearance certificate how it expired, upload the age. But that's not what we always do. That will check your documents while the call is still on. We don't normally do that, but sometimes it does happen.
Yeah, there's another question. Who's got the mic? You've got, okay. Great.
Ntate Tsietsi. Uskalebella Mufatsi. In his place, maybe I can support him onto what he's just said. There are a lot of stories that are very powerful that I've seen. And I have made many applications since from the times of Azania Mwendani, Lebo Metandeka and stuff like that. And I've tried to be compliant. Compliance is extraordinary. Now, my question to you is, Moyene and Miskin Fonna, do you have to have some kind of a tertiary qualifications to be approved? Why I'm saying that, Kehore, he's been making films for as long as he can remember. I have been making films from 1986, and I have been taught by the so-called whites. I have produced as many films as I can. Some net. But now when I'm doing applications to you guys, I get in because now you are using outside evaluators who's got some kind of qualifications and by expect or since the beginning degree or something like PhD in filmmaking stuff like that. But the bottom line is I am making a movie. People out there, my audience, will never look at the administration process. They will want to see a movie that entertains people, that educates people, that informs people. So what types of process do you follow to ensuring that the evaluators that you appoint really do look deeply into a person's capabilities and they give him what he needs? I mean, I've been applying, you know that. But still, I'm just seen as a nobody. Most of the projects that you fund gets at the province, and you do road shows. But at the end of the day, people who are being funded in province in Yarona, maybe but baleko Gauteng. Now, how does that work?
Remedupi.
Just sorry, it will be the last question. We are under huge time constraints, but Tsietsi is running around the festival for the rest of the day, and I'm sure you can corner him. Please.
Remedupi, your degree in filmmaking, it's not a criteria. What gives you the funding is the story. I think Metandeka can attest to that. Now, honale criteria but it doesn't give you a lot of points. Yeah, experience. Now they will say Yes, they evaluate, okay, this person does not have a qualification in the film industry, but he's got the potential. Then that's how we'll fund you. And sometimes they will say, this person does not understand the basic of storytelling. Now the recommendation will be that he needs to go through Sidiba or whatever. So that's what normally happens. We're not looking for your degree. We're not looking for your diploma in anything, but it's your passion in the industry and the potential that you have in the industry. And in terms of funding Northwest, I think now I'm sitting with about 4 projects that are coming from the Northwest. And the nice thing, it will say 018. Then it assures me Northwest. But the other thing, this thing, and it's a human element, there's nothing we can do about it. People can cheat and say, how can your details and address and everything, say, I'm from the Northern Cape, only to find that you've migrated to Gauteng. Unfortunately, we cannot tell that. We will only know Hansri communicate at some stage, but there's nothing we can do about that. And the other thing, I just want to make it clear, we don't fund Gauteng projects. We fund everybody who has applied. And hence I said earlier on, once you apply, or I'm from Northwest, already on only 2 points, without even looking at your story, without even looking at any other thing, Sentana only a preferential treatment. Renali, we once had this project, I think you remember Okovi, which came from the Free State. When we evaluated, we were like, okay, this is a good project, although Nenali slightly rejected, but we said, we can do that. Just because it was from the Free State. But if it was from Gauteng, we will just let it be as it is. But what I'm saying is that to Northwest, request a training to come your way. And sometimes when you get this Sidiba, don't just go there. Go there, go Sidiba with your project. While you guys are busy about facilitate, about teacher, look at your project. How about Ruta Hongwala MTP? Look at your MTP. Okay, this is how I can improve it. This is what I need to do on it. And our panelists are well trained in terms of storytelling and nothing more. And that's exactly what they look at. If maybe one day you'd apply, if it that compliance, or reject you, go cancelling, I'd be the one to make notes for you, and then you'd be able to see, we look at the story and nothing else. It's not about the face, it's not about where you come from, it's about the concept itself.
That's your answer there.
You know what you can do? The projects are how, like now. Then I can see more failures in more thing. You can give me a project, then I'll have a look on the system and I'll tell you if ufitile. And you also have the right to write to us and ask. Even the previous projects, you can write to us and say, Ukopadi notes. We'll prepare them for you and give them to you. If we apply late 3 years back and also create notes, even today, I can get to the office and prepare those notes for you and go on.
I think what I'm getting out of all of this, quite frankly, is that we actually need to start rethinking funding models. We need to find alternatives, because I don't think the structures in place can actually deal with the capacity we have. If you look at some of these funding where he said, he mentions that they might get 300 applications, and out of those 300 applications, you'll fund how many? 30. No, in total. If you get 300 applications, on average, you can fund maybe...
Maybe to give you an example, with this last cycle, we had more than 300. We could only fund 100 and, I think 120.
Okay, so
But
that's,
also because of we funded a lot of projects in development. Because
so,
remember with
so
development,
that's a 30% rate. And you'll possibly find that all 300 had merit and deserved funding in some way, shape, or form. How are we in platforms like this going to sit together and start rethinking funding models? Who else can we approach? How can we figure out different ways? How do we get municipalities involved? How do we get private sector involved? Because all of these people, I think that the only place that filmmaking doesn't directly affect is mining. But otherwise, accommodation, tourism, transport, security, clothing, manufacturing, we touch everything. And we need to start thinking about how we can convince these people that they need to come to the party, right? Because we cannot be sitting on a 30% funding rate. It's not going to grow us, right? But yeah, time is up. I think I'm being frowned at a lot and lunch is ready. But like I said, we are all over the place. We're here for you guys. If you need to chat to us, just grab us by the collar and let's talk. And the only way we can find solutions is by connecting as per #RFF Connect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mama T. Guys, I think for now we will go for lunch. Retlovo ka mo ka bo 2:30. I mean, wait. Got 2. Okay. No, got 2. Hona le session e thomang ka 2.